Okay, so we just got done talking about Socrates and Crito and the whole ethical dilemma they had right there. Brilliant guys, awesome guys. I don't much care for them, actually. So we're going to go on to the next issue, how to not answer moral questions. Is we're actually going to do more than that, since this is basically just common sense. We have like death penalty. So, it is morally wrong to take the life of another means of punishment. It is morally wrong to take the life of another as means of punishment. Well, that's a claim versus ice cream flavors. So, what's the difference between death penalty debate and ice cream flavor debate? Well, they can be the same thing, but really they're not. Because one is a preference, the ice cream flavors, and one is a moral judgment, the death penalty. Moral questions are thus fundamentally different, because it's not something that really has any real importance. Because people should do whatever they believe is right. We live by our own conscience. But we should have a legal right to do whatever they think is right, the liberty of conscience. In special cases, the whole harms principle. But then again, that's like preference, like that. What do you believe is right? I believe it's right to eat chocolate ice cream rather than vanilla ice cream. That's great. But then we have a bigger question. What is actually right? That is the moral judgment. Um, when really, ice cream flavors is not a question of morality. It's a question of your taste buds. So basically, what is actually right? The big question in the death penalty is it okay to kill murderers? Completely different from preferences. Because we give reasons in favor of a conclusion, much like science. We prove by an appeal to facts. But ethics is normative too. It's much like science in the way we argue it, but it's prescriptive and normative, while science is descriptive. Because but still, in both cases, we have statements and propositions that can be true or false. It depends on what the world is like. So we're trying to define the world of morality in this case. There's also that is the debunking of preferences opposed to moral judgments. Next, we have, can we settle moral questions by polls? No. It has a terrible idea. It's pretty self-explanatory. What is most popular might not be right. For instance, slavery. Everything that has ever been bad was at one point thought good in somewhere in the world. But then can we provide a basis for morality by appealing to a moral authority, specifically God, a divine authority? And that has a lot of problems. So we'll talk about that mainly because this is one of the essay questions of the exam. First off, there is the divine command theory with the so, oh wait, obviously there's the existence of God as an issue, blah 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 blah. But let's say God existed. Um, we're appealing to a moral authority that everyone shares. Say, if God did exist. So we're saying God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent. Those big three things. Everyone loves God because He's awesome like that. So, one second. Okay, so he has all these traits, and we're like, why should we think that the authority God is an authority? Because he has a lot of power. He's omnipotent. But might is not right. That's one big problem. But he has a lot of knowledge. But we need to make sense of what makes something good before God can know that it is good. So there are still reasons. And we are also saying God is subject to another authority. God can know about himself and all. God can know about a separate entity of good, but we still need to make sense of what makes things bad or good. Because if God can know they're good, well, then there has to be still some reasons. So then we have the if and only if, the biconditionals and conditional statements. Those are super fun. Modal logic, yay, yay logic. We say divine command theory. God forbids an action because it is wrong. Well, this doesn't answer why something is wrong. Okay, so let's rephrase it. It is wrong because God forbids it. Well, why does God forbid it? So we combine those. An action is wrong if and only if and because God forbids it. Awesome stuff. Lots of pink colors. So then we have Socrates again, because Socrates touches upon this. Surprise, surprise. He asks Euthyphro, is it divine command or not? And Euthyphro just, divine command theory. Socrates is just like, does God have reasons for the commands? Why does he forbid what he forbids? And Euthyphro's like, yes, because all these bad outcomes. And then Socrates says, well, aren't the reasons what actually make things wrong? Aren't the reasons doing all the work? Yeah. Then Euthyphro's just like, maybe. The commands themselves are the foundation. But then Socrates just pulls out the big card of like saying, oh, well, aren't they arbitrary then? Okay, so here we have a small excerpt of, even if they are arbitrary, what does the divine command theory imply if there is no God? Say we don't accept that God exists. Hi, Matt. I'm just doing a video right now. If we don't accept that God exists, can you still have divine command theorists as an atheist? And the answer is yes, because that's moral nihilism. The idea that morality doesn't have to exist because morality can only come from a divine being, which we say doesn't exist. The logic is pretty strong right there. But going back to Euthyphro and Socrates' arguments, Euthyphro says in response, in good response to Socrates, that God's nature is fixed / necessary and couldn't have been otherwise. And Socrates just says why. The big why question. And it is routed back to the other theory that there is a separate entity that God would have to appeal to of good. So that is not a popular way to talk about divine command theory because, as you see, it doesn't logically flow. So then we have a second answer. We say instead of something is wrong if and only if because God says it, and we say instead an action is wrong if and only if and because God disapproves of you for doing it. It's basically the same dialogue between Socrates and Euthyphro, except Socrates says, aren't the reasons what make them wrong? And Euthyphro says, not quite. God's commands amplify the reasons we already have. Basically, it's kind of like your mom talking to you about not eating cookies, but you still eat the cookies, and she says, "Oh well, Troy, you shouldn't eat the cookies because they're unhealthy for you. You're going to get fat. Childhood obesity. Oh no, bad." But then you say, "Oh well, that's terrible. You still eat the cookie." But then you suddenly see the big frown on your mom's face, and you feel terrible on the inside. So it adds one big component of why not to do it, why not to eat the cookies. Likewise, we shouldn't do bad things because God has a big frown on his face. And because we had that extreme relationship with our mother, likewise we would have that extreme relationship with God if, obviously we're taking into account if God existed and if this is true. Oh. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So then, where was I? Okay, so then we have one more alternative to divine command theory. It's still theistic, it still believes in God, and we're gonna say God forbids things because they are wrong. Um, and the concern is God still the author of morality? And the answer to that is God is the indirect author of the moral law. It's this natural law theory. God creates things with particular natures, and that nature gives rise to what is right or wrong for that being. Such as, we had this example in class. If you go up and you stab somebody, and they bleed to death, that's bad. But you stab somebody and they have this miraculous ability to heal themselves back together, well then, and you knew that, if you knew that before you stabbed them, then that isn't necessarily bad because you knew it was going to be okay. So for different people, you had this natural morality that God has created within you when He created you. The awesome thing about this is that if God is taken out, then not much changes. You still have that natural moral implication. This is much like the moral sense theory that Hume gives, but you just add God into it. And this is awesome because in the end, theists and atheists can find common ground. So that's natural law theory. Next, we're going to talk about cultural relativism, and that takes a bit of time, so it may be actually an even longer video than this. Make sure you have free time when you talk about it. And that's the end of video number 2. Good luck.